You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host. As always, this week we have a very special guest in. We're covering a new topic, one we haven't spoken about in nearly 7 years. Lifestyle villages. And we have the man in Western Australia who's done it all before, is doing it again with Providence Lifestyle Group. It is John Wood, their MD. John, thanks so much for coming in, mate. This is a special episode because I think it's one most people at a novel level will find mildly interesting, at least, and I think very interesting. But at a practical level, I think there'd be a lot of listeners here going, this could actually be an opportunity for me one day or now for my lifestyle.
Nice to meet you, Trent.
I want to start this conversation like we often do with a quick few minutes about how we got to this point where you're sitting in this chair today getting asked about what you do. Where did it all start in the most humble of beginnings, and how did you get to here?
Try and give you 25 years in 2.5 minutes.
Please.
My dad founded Fleetwood Caravans in '64 in Maddington. My first house, my parents lived in the caravan and I lived in the annex with my brother and sister. So I grew up in the caravan industry under the Fleetwood brand.
People would remember this brand. They may still have some around, right?
Yeah, my dad used to do his own commercials, but his name was John Wood as well, and so I didn't really want to follow in his footsteps. I wanted to try and do my own thing. I failed pretty miserably, and he eventually convinced me to join the business when he showed me these photo albums of a bunch of what they call manufactured home communities in the US and Europe, which were some really daggy trailer trash, which is the opening scene of an American movie where someone gets shot, to some really luxurious manufactured home communities.
Would this look like the caravan park at Home and Away?
Yes, I haven't seen Home and Away for a long time, but I presume so. Basically, through the 90s, caravan parks were not visited by Australians very much. They could travel overseas very cheaply, go to Bali. So the caravan industry and caravan park industry, the tourism industry, really struggled. And the only way park operators could survive is by renting their caravan park tourist sites permanently to people that would live in a caravan. And so what my dad said is, we can make these caravans into nicer homes. Back then it was still pretty basic, but I looked out over in the eastern states to see what people were doing and started to design some caravan park homes, but using normal building quality materials rather than a sandwich panel annex.
What would be some examples we see in WA at the moment around the metro area?
Oh, so if you go to, say, Caversham Caravan Park out in the Swan Valley, you know, it's a beautiful tourist park, but there will be probably 30% of that caravan park that has permanent residents that live there permanently.
That's a big four one, isn't
Yep,
it?
it's a big four. Lakelands. And so I convinced a whole lot of people in Perth that own caravan parks, just dedicate a quarter of your caravan park and we'll call that part a premier leisure village. Because people didn't want to live in a caravan park, they would live in a premier leisure village. And so we developed this little brand. And I would run ads on a weekend saying, hey, live in one of these premier leisure villages. And I think the first 6 were actually Caversham, Armidale Tourist Park, Woodman Point Caravan Park, Lakelands Leisure Village, and a Central Caravan Park.
These are ones that we still use today, right?
Yeah, and people are still living there and they've on-sold them. This is going back in the early 90s, and so through the 90s I sold about 1,000 of these mobile homes. I remember running the first ad and getting surprised because I had 200 faxes. That's when you'd fax your inquiry. Oh, no, sorry, I get people to go out to the caravan parks. The manager would show someone one of our display homes and then they would fax me the inquiry on a Monday and I just rubble through these faxes and just ring people. And anyway, that's how it all started. But I think what I learnt through that time, one is I was running out of places to put them. 2, the tourism industry was resurging, and so it was more valuable for a caravan park owner to rent out his site overnight because you get a lot more money than permanently in a week.
This sounds like the relationship between long stay rentals, private rentals, and Airbnb.
Exactly. But the more important thing is I really struggled selling a home to Mr. and Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Jones only, and then she would have a relationship with the person that owned the park. And if the park got sold or if they were trying to improve profitability, they could change the rules on the client. And so I really wanted to build a place that was like a caravan park that had no tourists, where we could create our own rules of engagement and have a place that I'd be really happy for my mum to live in. And so I built my first community in 1999, which Jeff Gallup opened as a test case in WA. I think the government put a moratorium and said, let's just see how this first one goes, which was a 300-home site in Wanneroo Road called the Lake Joondalup Lifestyle Village. And it went really well, and I had long-term lease tenure, full disclosure, lots of clear guidelines of what it's like to live there and what the rules were living there.
How long were the leases?
60 years.
60 years.
Yeah, so we went from 90 days in a caravan park to 60 years in one of our resorts. And in fact, that's been legislated for a long time, but I think government's just about has allowed us to maybe extend it to 99 years. Anyway,
if
sorry, I
anyone's
got
taking
distracted.
up that full 99 years,
that'll
I'll be surprised.
that'll have at least 10 owners over that period of time, yeah.
Are you the pioneer of lifestyle villages in WA, John? And I know you'd be humble about this, but it sounds like no one was doing this before you.
No, when I was at Fleetwood, I helped a group do one where they renovated the Seaforth Caravan Park on Albany Highway next to the Seaforth Railway Station, and that was called Riverside Gardens. And I was supplying the homes and they were building the resort. And also a fellow called John Court from Emeco did a project with Fleetwood in Mandurah called Mandurah Gardens Estate. So I wasn't the first, but I was involved in the first and thought I really want to do it in a way that was a bit more sophisticated, and left Fleetwood to do that. And
you weren't the first, but it sounds like you became the biggest in Western Australia.
Yeah. I wanted to be a partner in the Riverside Gardens one, and a famous football player, Bill Walker, Sandover medalist, invited me to be a partner, and I eventually convinced myself, I'll become a partner, but it didn't work out and they ended up getting a different partner. But that gave me the courage to maybe do my first one, which was the one out at Wanneroo. And I'd been working in the industry developing policy with the city of Wanneroo, so I knew that I could probably navigate through the approval process because they were more advanced local government in terms of open to the idea of a land lease development that wasn't a caravan park but technically zoned a caravan park.
Tell me a little bit more about the nerdy side of that. We're talking about a specific act that you helped pioneer in that way too. We also hear of things like Stockland and Yokes land lease communities as well. Are they essentially lifestyle villages charading as suburbs?
No, I
under
think
the same act?
So there's two planning pathways. Up until a few years ago, the only way you could develop a land lease community is via getting it zoned Park Home Park, which is a subset of Caravan Park. But that was very boutique, and I had to convince councils to head down this path, and it'd be like a discretionary use or a non-conforming use. So it took a long time to get them approved.
Go into a structure plan as a specific, this area can do this.
I was often outside the structure plans because once the structure plan was set, I was an excluded use. So I would often find rural land, which coincidentally Caravan Park was often a permitted use, right next door to urban, but very fringe urban. What the government has been clever in doing is under the Residential Parks Long Stay Tenants Act, there's this thing now called independent living or group dwelling, which is another planning pathway. So Stocklands and Yoke Group can either choose to head down the path of finding land that is zoned caravan park and therefore there's a solution, or within the structure plan there's an urban use and independent living is a permitted use within that structure plan. So there's a little bit more flexibility for people to enter the market now. And what's really nice is you've got Stocklands and Leicester Group and Aspen and Serenitas and now us that are all collectively talking to the government. Because I was really the only person to do it for 20 years, anytime I wanted to talk to the government, it would probably come around as trying to feather my own nest.
Yeah.
When I really think this is a fantastic solution.
There's no industry to represent here. It's just yourself
at
the point.
But now we've got an industry, I feel like we can really fast track and open up planning pathways and get a lot more product out and be part of the solution to this housing crisis, because every single one of our buyers are generally living in a 4x2 house, which should be a family market, and they're just underoccupied.
I 100% agree with that, and we need to cover that later in this episode. So if you could characterise what a Providence lifestyle village looks like,
Yep.
if I was totally lay, coming through your front gates, what would it look like? Because a lot of people haven't actually visited one before.
Okay, that's a good question. So if you're driving in, you've got a very sophisticated looking entry that isn't highly developed, that's landscaped, so it really feels like a destination, like you're coming home, a bit like a resort.
Like going to a golf course or something.
Yeah, same sort of thing. Immaculately landscaped homes, because there's a consistent theme and policy throughout the resort, and pocket parks and some central facilities that are the hero of the place, which is really a lot of the homeowners' extension of their backyard, where they get to meet and bump into people.
The club room.
The club rooms, yeah, the clubhouse, or country club as we sometimes call it.
What sort of things are in these country clubs? What is the society demanding these days?
For example, our one at Piara Waters, which is the first Providence in WA, it's very similar to what I did before, but it's like a souped up version. It's got indoor pool, outdoor pool, gymnasium, sauna, spa, cinema, music room, dance floor, clubhouse, cafe, craft room, like just lots and lots of things. And then we've got another area, which is, because a lot of people moving into resorts these days, there is in their mid to late 60s, whereas retirement villages is more mid to late 80s. So we're like a generation younger, so it's really independent living.
Yep.
They're very connected to their families and babysitting duties and looking after the grandkids while their daughter goes to work. So we've got this separate area which can be booked out for private use, where the grandkids can make a bit of noise and muck around. And then there's the pool where the grandkids and the family can visit, and then there's the indoor pool, which is really just for the homeowners. So we've got these different spaces for people to use. And the other thing which is really exciting is it's the nicest, I shouldn't say men's shed, it's hobby shed. It's for everybody, but women integrate a lot easier than men. And so I wanted to create this space where guys will talk if they're using their hands, girls will talk regardless of what their hands are doing. And so our hobby shop is woodwork, metalwork, mechanics, golf simulator, microbrewery, card table, darts, barbecue, and a destination, another space in the resort for people to hang out as a social space.
And what about the residences themselves? How would I best identify with them?
That's a bit harder. So they're all modular houses because they are transportable, which is how we achieve the zoning. And in fact, they're still on wheels.
How is that? They look like they were on a concrete slab and they're steel construction.
They are on a concrete slab, and the wheels that we're using is steel. Now, we plan to get the legislation adjusted so the reason for the wheels are not necessarily required, but it's the evolution of the legislation.
The legislation is always behind the reality.
Yeah, but if you think about it, the house is a chattel, a bit like a car or a caravan, because we evolved out of that industry. But it's a very important piece of the whole affordable housing solution, because people who buy a home in our resorts, they own the home, which is a chattel, but they don't own the land. They have a 60-year lease over the land or a 100-year lease over the land. But because they don't own the land, they're eligible for a Centrelink rebate. So they might spend $260 a week to live in the resort, which covers their rates, taxes, lawn mowing, rubbish removal, security, pools, everything. But they get about a $90 rebate under Centrelink, so their real cost of living in the resort's about $160 or $150, which is really affordable living because you're actually upgrading your lifestyle, having safety and security, and you're saving money on so many other things because they can have a drink on a Friday night, wander back, not get an Uber, feel safe, and they've got gates that are locked behind them.
And the community side of things as well. You said that they own the building, own the house, and it's on wheels.
Oh,
could I hitch it up to my Triton and nick off?
No, each half is about 20 tonne. But what we do is we sink the house in the ground, so it's ground level, it looks contemporary, and then we add about $100,000 worth of patios, carports, solar, batteries, paving, aggregate concrete, decking. So it looks more like a contemporary home, but the method of delivery is via modular. And we've got 17 different home designs. So you can have a 110 square metre 3x2 or a small 50 square metre one-bedroom apartment.
So there are nominal wheels on these things, but they're not moving it anywhere, essentially.
Yeah. The main thing is that it is capable of being pulled on its own by a drawbar and it doesn't disintegrate. It is totally modular, which means that in 100 years' time, that home can be shifted to another life and completely recyclable. Most construction methodologies, even if they're called modular, you have to disintegrate them to shift them.
Oh, yeah.
These are really houses that are truly modular. And the notion of being on wheels means that it has to support its own structure to be moved. The fact is we roll it onto the back of a low loader or put it on by a crane. But that is why the notion of the wheels makes it more relocatable and transportable.
So it sounds like you've really upgraded and gone on a journey with what you're providing here, from the annex that hangs off the side of a caravan to what really, to most people, would look like a unit. That's got to cost a lot more money to put together than it did back in the day.
Yeah, my first home I remember selling in 91 for $39,995, and my advert was sell your house for $100,000 and buy a house for 40 and put 60 in the bank. These days I'm saying buy a house for 500, sell your house for 800 and put 300 in the bank. So it's still a downsizing story, but it's just a much more sophisticated product and more appealing to the majority of the market.
And that's what the reality is really for your clients, for the people who are living there. They're downsizing from, it could be a quarter acre, it could be a unit themselves, just anything that's probably worth more. So they've got some money in the bank, and then coming in at prices, what would the range be?
Our entry level is around 400. We go up to about 870 for the nicest.
Top of the wazza.
Top of the wazza. But yeah, so it's downsizing their lifestyle, but potentially up-speccing their life and having the pool but not having to clean it anymore, and having access to everything but having just more time to enjoy life.
So we've made that downsize, upgrading our life, and I actually do agree with you. I don't think that's a sell at all. We're paying for the property that we can then sell in the future to the next Mavis at some point in time if we wanted to. Would there be stamp duty involved with selling that, or because it's not land-based?
Yeah, because it's a chattel, there's no stamp duty, so it's a big saving for downsizers, which is often a reason they don't do it. But the government still get their lick because there's more people prepared to sell, which releases that stock for the family buyer
and
that will
honest,
pay stamp duty.
They should understand that a bit more across the whole downsizing spectrum, and a lot of people, I think, are continually trying to advocate for that concession-based scenario. Then we're leasing out the land portion. How does that work? Is it just the land the building's on plus a bit of a backyard and no one's allowed on my property? How does that work?
So the only real difference, so it still has a boundary fence. It is still notionally their exclusive use, but they don't own it. They have the exclusive use to use that area, have their own privacy, but there's a set of common lease rules across the resort around the standard of how their house needs to be maintained, the standard of the gardens that we need to maintain. It's like a community title. It's like a strata title.
It sounds like a built strata in that sense, at least.
In that sense. But because we still own the land, it gives us the opportunity to know that over a period of, say, 7 stages, over 10 hectares or 12 hectares, the theme of what we started to do can be followed through all the way to the end for the benefit of everybody that lives there. Because when you've got your identity, you've got your theming, it all needs to make sense. And so we've able to put some controls in place that allow us to deliver a better finished product at the end.
So I'm therefore leasing this land. You say nominally $260 maybe a week.
Yep.
And I might get a rebate on that from my pension if I'm of age.
Yep.
I guess first question is, can I be 35 and move into one of these things, or do I have to be a certain age?
We're allowed to discriminate against kids. So as long as you're an adult without kids, you can live in the resort. If you've got grandkids or visitors, kids visiting from overseas, they're welcome to stay. But in terms of being around like-minded people, it is adults without kids.
Yeah.
You have to be over 45 to live in the resort.
Oh, okay. So 45 is is that something that you guys have put in place, or is that a government thing?
It's something I introduced 20 years ago after I let my first 18-year-old move in with someone. They bought a house. They thought he was going to pass his exams. He failed and said, can he live here another year? And it was most traumatic year because he had arguments. Kids just are kids, right?
Or it's a turbulent time.
It's a turbulent time. I wasn't allowed to discriminate. I would insinuate this is an over 45s.
That's how it
lifestyle
seems
resort.
marketed, right? Over 55s, over 65. But I wasn't sure whether that's an actual
it's
rule
subsequently
or not.
been legislated.
There you
So,
go.
yeah, we actually discriminate because we don't allow kids to live there permanently.
Yep.
Have to be over 45 unless you're caring for someone or we make special circumstances for family circumstances.
Now, if I'm leasing, that means I'm not paying rates.
Correct.
That's a big one.
For a consumer, if your mum was living there or you were living there, you pay your $260 a week, that's it. It only goes up once a year by CPI plus 2%. And within all of that, the only additional charge you have is if you want to lease a caravan storage bay, which is about $20 a week. Your rates, your taxes, your lawn mowing, your rubbish removal, your security, your infrastructure,
Utilities,
all of those
power,
utilities.
water.
Sorry, you pay your own power.
Yep.
Although in our resort, we put embedded networks, so each home has its own battery, solar and inverter.
So it should be fairly
And-
self-sustainable, given there wouldn't be a lot of draw from these places.
Correct, and they're very well acoustically insulated, but we actually provide 8 units of power per day for every homeowner, and the power that's not used we use to run the resort. And because they have a relationship with us as the provider, they don't have to pay Synergy the $1 a day charge, which is another saving of $30 a month.
That's a win.
They do pay their own water to Water Corporation.
So everyone's metered that way as
Yeah.
well. Let's talk about the economics of running and owning a lifestyle villages for the nerds out there. You've got to buy a lot of land for starters, right? So this is costing, let's be honest, millions of dollars to buy the land to create a lifestyle village.
Yeah.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
You've then got to, in a staggered nature, given you stage out these resorts, build the homes that eventually get purchased. Is it a sort of a situation where obviously you're fronting up for the land in the first place, and then as people come with interest, put their deposits down or the security down, you would then start the construction, or you're pre-building a bunch of these and saying, hey, display homes, move in tomorrow?
Early on, I could only afford to put in a display home and then sell and customise to suit. As we've got more sophisticated over time and the balance sheet got stronger, we now will build a stage at a time. So we'll build the 30 homes. Because I've sold probably 3,000 of these things over the last years, I know which ones are the most popular. And we've ironed out most of the things that didn't work and incorporated them and just basically sell off the plan. If we've done stage 1 and we're getting feedback that the market is shifting, then we can just modify what we deliver for stage 2. So we're constantly tweaking it to suit the market. But in answer to your question, when I first started out, I needed other people to help me underpin the capital
nature would be massive.
to deliver it.
Yeah.
Banks really struggle with this because you might have a 10-hectare property, and as soon as you have the first person move in, they don't have an alternative use for the rest of the land. They really look at who are the proponents, do they know what they're doing, and so we do have to validate that there is a strong enough market that we will find 260 people that will want to live there, and we will go through a pre-sales sort of regime to satisfy our financiers and satisfy our equity participants. And we will stage it. We can't avoid the capital on the land. In the past, somehow I've managed to convince landowners that really care about the state to let me give them deferred consideration. So I will often pay more than the land's worth and share some of that, but then they have to trust me that I'm going to deliver what I'm doing. These days, people are less inclined to do that.
Especially in this market.
Yeah. We have to settle the land. I tend to delay that as long as possible, so I've got my approvals in place, and hopefully after I've gone through the approval process, I've created some equity for the business, which helps us get the senior debt finance and lowers the amount of equity I might need to contribute to make it a fully funded project.
I can imagine these days where you've got the clubhouse, you've got the front gate and the landscaping, everything in between, there'd be some serious money put down at the start, just like a Satterley estate, for example, putting their parks and all that in first, before you've actually even received $1 from your first client, your first resident coming in, because you want to sell the dream.
Yeah.
You mentioned the councils. Do they make it easy? Do they want lifestyle villages? Do they see the value? Or is it sort of horses for courses? Certain councils are easier, certain are harder. Is it a relationships-based thing where they know, hey, John Wood knows how to do this thing well in the same way that Paul Blackburn knows how to do the apartments well? What's the landscape right now for what is obviously a discretionary or non-standard use of land where the council was probably originally thinking, well, that would have been 120 houses?
I don't really know how to answer that. It does help that I've built the most number of communities in WA, and there's 5,000 people that would have lived in one of the communities that I built. So that credibility gets me a long way. But the councils are changing so much, and I think the risk appetite for people making decisions is gradually reduced over time, because I think people generally try and protect their behind rather than step out of a limb.
And that's everywhere in council, across all developments.
So there's that. A lot of the projects that I've got approved have been bespoke, so I've had to find which are the bits of land that I think I might be able to navigate through, and do I have a CEO and a council that's forward-thinking and really wants this to be an asset in their community. And if I can convince them it's going to be an asset,
then they'll make it happen.
And not a ghetto, because people are, when I say it's a caravan park, people just assume ghetto, but it's just an avenue, a path for...
It's a planning pathway, lifestyle
path.
village.
Yeah.
And that sort of speaks to me a number of times in this conversation where we probably need some legislative updates here to reflect the reality of where a lot of people in life are going to end up one day. And this is why I wanted to get you on as part of that solution of the housing crisis that you referenced earlier, is it's not always going to be apartments that Paul Blackburn can provide to people in Florida or City Beach or Subiaco or Peppy Grove. That's not always going to be the solution, to be honest. And it's probably not going to be the solution for a lot of people, most people. I think the solution for the average Joe is probably more likely your product. And the reality is it's a lot of people these days. We're an aging population, a lot of people that are over 55, a lot more than are under 20, I believe. They're living longer. They're needing somewhere to live. There certainly doesn't seem to be a financially feasible market in the retirement village space. Nothing's being built by your Aegis and your Brightwaters and all that these days, given construction costs.
Yep.
And people, I think, don't want to live in the smelly old retirement village either. That smells a bit like death and piss, let's be honest. And so they look at your option and go, this is what I hoped my seniority would look like. But there's only one or two or three or four of you.
It is a bit of a square.
Tens, hundreds of thousands of people that are getting old.
Because I came out of the caravan park industry, I was always on the committee for the Caravan Parks Association and a subset of that. I was the president for a while, and we did get the caravan park legislation changed so you could live in a caravan park for more than 90 days. That was in 1995. The Labor government, to their credit, have been more proactive. They helped get that act through, and then they also helped get through the Residential Parks Long Stay Tenants Act. But that was in 2006. The legislation that I'm currently still building to is nearly 30 years old.
It doesn't seem appropriate either. This feels like you've Frankenstein something you had influence on a long time ago. But you're not building caravan parks. You're building what looks more like a totally different legislation and outcome and expectation from the community.
Yeah. So at the moment, Stocklands, myself, Serenitas, the industry that are now playing in WA, because they've all come from the East Coast over to here, and there's also people that have been involved in my business that have gone out on their own and they really like this model. We've pulled together a white paper which is just about finished, which is being distributed and communicated to government via UDIA. I'm very hopeful that we get to sit down with Kerry. We've got 5 ministers that are in touch ours. We've got local government, Beasley. We've got planning, Rita. We've got Kerry with housing. We've got seniors. We just want them to sit around a table because between us, we've got about 10,000 homes we can deliver in the next decade, which will release 10,000 family houses to the market. So we don't fit everybody, but this is an interesting part of the solution. The bit that people don't realise is that as we've aged as a community, when I first started in 91, there were 8,500 people that turned 65 that year. When I started my first resort, there were 13,500 that turned 65 that year. This year, there were is 33,000 people that turned 65 this year. Ours is probably the most coolest product for people in their 60s. Apartments are great products as well, but half of our clients have got pets. Half of them don't want common walls.
Half of them never lived in a city either.
And half of them want to lock and leave
and
travel and just have a sort of a secure environment. So we are definitely a cool option for people whose kids have left home and they don't want to maintain the house and gardens. They just want to have a better life.
And it's also an option, I think, if I can be very frank, for those who don't have the $1.5 to $3 million to go and buy an apartment.
100%.
This is a much more economical way to live a simpler, lower cost, less frills in a way, life financially, without reducing the lifestyle aspect of it. It's a big ask with these high-end apartments going through Applecross and the western suburbs to come up with money that, to be frank, most parents, their home is worth less than $1 million. For less than $1 million now, you're getting maybe a 2-bedroom apartment, not with river views, and that is a huge downsize in terms of lifestyle in a lot of people's opinion.
I remember my dad coining a phrase. He said, this is a way people can have a rich life that aren't rich. It just removes the barrier to entry because you are actually freeing up capital, which is great for the government because they're funding their own lifestyle.
I think there should be a Lifestyle Villages Act. I expect there will be one day because it feels like what you've done really is hijack an act that was close enough that people will be happy enough to let you do your thing.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we're in a new generation now. It doesn't look like a caravan park. It's not a park situation. This is a different asset class, really.
The other thing is apartments are fantastic, but they can be isolating for people. Half of our clients are single, and of those single, 75% are ladies. I'm seeing more and more divorcees going through, the kids have left home, and often couples were there and stayed there for the kids. But once the kids have left home, they really only have that one asset. And if they've got to go their separate ways and not remortgage or not go back into the workforce, this is a way of being able to buy 2 houses from the sale of 1 house for singles, which is, I don't know how else they can do it unless they go out to the boondocks, but also then get the connectivity and the brain stimulation and the pool and the gym and the sauna. So, yeah, I'm a bit biased, Trent.
You've got lifestyle resorts at the moment. You said Piara Waters. I know you have one in Henley Brook down the road from one of our developments. Where else are you, and where else do you think you will be over the next 5 to 10 years?
So at the moment, we've got 4 projects approved. The Henley Brook, we've had the first 1 and 2 stages with about 30 homes occupied. Our project in Mandurah on the corner of Riverside Drive and Pinjarra Road, the first homes will be occupied in December. We're hoping to get development approval in Wattle Grove, a really cool development in Wattle Grove. And we're partnering with another colleague that's building a retirement village next door. So we'll have intergenerational option for people, which is pretty cool. And I've got one in Vass that we're starting. We've got an expansion to one at Mandurah. We've got another one in Wanneroo. And we've got one a bit further north in the coastal corridor, which we'll announce in a couple of weeks' time when we submit the DA. So there's about 8 projects we're doing, which will be about 2,000 homes altogether.
It's great to understand that number, but also the diversity of location, because what we also know is that people don't like moving more than about 5 k's from where they currently live, because that's where the community is.
Yeah, for a retirement village, typically people won't move from within 5 to 10 kilometre radius. Our clients are more independent and they're still driving, so they're a little bit more open to shifting 20 kilometres away. A lot of our clients moving closer to their kids that have been in a growth corridor. So a lot of our projects are on the fringe of growth corridors because half of our clients want to be close to their
kids
family.
Are where they can afford as well.
That's right, yeah.
John, I really appreciate the chat today, mate. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of you and people in your space in the future making more of an impact on our housing crisis. I think a lot of people will be listening to this today thinking, wow, I never thought about that, but that does sound really important to our future as a state. So thanks for being a pioneer. Thanks for sharing your info today, and hopefully we can have you in again to tell us about how well you're doing with those key players in government in moving the dial a bit.
Thanks a lot, Trent.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!